Hello, this is Youngsun again, and in this lesson 3, we will look into ways to teach science and mathematics, and we will compare Piaget versus Vygotsky, and they are also known as personal constructivist versus social constructivist. They have different views on learning in terms of roles of language, culture, and so on. So in this lesson, we will examine what is Kant. Kant means Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher. Kant, Copernicus, the heliocentric and geocentric views of Earth system, and Copernican revolution in philosophy. And then we will review the difference between Piaget and Vygotsky in light of learning and language. And since you all well know about Piaget's theory of developmental stages and so on, I will not go through in detail. And Piaget is well known as a so-called genetic epistemologist. He tried to reveal genetical development or genetic developmental processes of children's cognitive development, cognition, and children's learning process or acquisition of cognitive mental tools. So he suggested so-called developmental stages of a child by researching or examining his own children. So there's two processes of Piagetian learning theory. One is organization and the other one is adaptation. So to Piaget, cognitive development was a progressive reorganization of mental processes forming from biological maturation and environmental experience. It's like a genetical development. It's like innate or sometimes it's hidden in your DNA or something, and it just develops as the child gets older and older. So Piaget's theory of learning differs from others by focusing solely on children, not the environment or the context surrounding the child, and focusing on the development rather than learning. And his theory consists of schema, the fundamental concepts of Piaget's theory include the schema, assimilation, equilibration, and accommodation. And before that, we need to examine so-called Copernicus revolution in philosophy. And this one is suggested by Immanuel Kant. And before Kant, humans or we thought there is the objective world and the subject, the epistemological or cognizing subject. And we are like rotating. The object is the reality, and any individual or any subject, they just accept or receive the objective world like anyone. Everyone has the same perception. It's the so-called objective meaning. It comes to any subject, since objective world is the center of the epistemology. And after Kant, subject is the main. I mean any individual, any person, they perceive differently depending on who she is. So it's the Copernicus revolution in philosophy. It's called the Copernicus revolution in philosophy because Kant reversed from objective meaning to subjective meaning. The center of the meaning or the epistemology of the center of epistemology is the subject, not the object. It's like in objective meaning making or objective epistemology, we are just mirroring the objective world. But after Kant, we perceive depending on my own perspective, my own views of point. So the center of meaning making or perception or epistemology is the subject. It's like switching the sun. So before that, the earth is the center and sun is rotating around the earth. But after the Copernicus switched the position of sun and the earth. Sun is the center and the earth is rotating around the sun. It's the Copernicus revolution in astronomy and the Kant revolution in philosophy is changing objective meaning making or objective epistemology into subjective epistemology. So according to Kant, we perceive or we make meanings from this one is objective reality, the thing in itself, and it which provides matter, material for cognition, and it shows some kind of a phenomenon. And then from subject, our mind, we input some kind of schema into this matter or into this phenomenon. And by combining this matter from the objective world and our schema from our forms of cognition from our mind, by combining these two, we come to a meaning. You need to remember this one. I mean, according to Kant, there could be some matter. It's empiricism. They focus on empirical world and they focus on this matter aspect. And there is a form. It's like rationalism. We, as a cognitive subject, we provide or we apply some kind of schema or forms of cognition. By combining these two, we come to a meaning. This one is Kant's Copernicus revolution in philosophy or in epistemology. Okay, based on Kant's revolution, Copernicus revolution in philosophy, Piaget explained the intellectual development of a child as two mechanisms. One is about assimilation. The other one is accommodation. By these two processes, our cognitive mental model sustains or arrives at equilibration again. I mean, assimilation means when you say that we are like there is object and this one is a subject. We have schema and forms and etc. If there's some kind of a conflict or there's some kind of a new input, so-called matter or experience, there's two ways. One is you just subsume this new information or do new experience or new matter. The other one is you need to change your mode so that you can make some terms with this new experience or new matter. That's accommodation. It's like changing your modality. Can you see that? Or you just subsume this new information or new material or new perception. So Piaget's learning theory consists of intellectual development, is composed of cognitive structure or schema. This one provides all kinds of forms of cognition. And there's cognitive contents as well. This one is form and this one is contents. And our mental cognitive structure or mental mechanism functions into organization and adaptation. Adaptation occurs by two processes: assimilation, subsuming new matter, new perceptual information, or subject modality, our cognitive structures, our mode of cognition or cognitive structures need to change. By these two processes, we get to or arrive at another equilibration. This one is what Piaget called operational ability of our intelligence. So this one is assimilation. You do not need to change your mode or your mental functions. This is the same pattern. So you just need to assimilate, or you just need to subsume this new matter of information. And this one is accommodation. You need to change your mode of cognition. What you already know does not apply to this new matter. So you need to change your mode. This is two mechanisms of cognitive functions. And Piaget also suggested so-called 4 stages of cognitive development. One is sensory motor from the birth to up to age 2. And this one is they just perceptional or they just act their bodies and their hands and based on sensory data. And the next stage is pre-operational. This is from age 2 to 7. The child uses language and symbols, including letters and numbers, but just like a word, like water or toy, etc. So the next stage is concrete operations from age 7 to age 11. And in this stage, the child demonstrates conservation, reversibility, serial ordering, and a mature understanding of causal relationships. Thinking at this stage is still concrete. They have a hard time in abstract reasoning or thinking. And the final stage of cognitive development is so-called formal operations. This one is the individual demonstrates abstract thinking, including logical, deductive reasoning, comparison, and classification. It's like highly symbolic ways of communication. They could or can communicate with symbolic signs, and they can conduct abstract thinking and reasoning. including cognitive developmental stages. Strengths of Piaget's cognitive theory, he provided insight and understanding of preschool and elementary school aged children's development and learning. And Piaget theorized that a child's moral development is formed by their understanding of rules and how their parents have cared for them up until the point that they could engage in rules. There's criticisms of Piaget's theories of cognitive development. Piaget's theory of cognitive development was criticized due to the fact that most of his observations were conducted on his own children, which is a little bit difficult to generalize to all children other than Piaget's own children. Still, his developmental stages and cognitive development, his mechanisms of mental functions provided thorough, full understanding of preschool and elementary school aged children. Okay, then let's look at Lev Vygotsky's social constructivist learning theory. According to Vygotsky, social constructivism, or according to social constructivist views on learning, learning is a collaborative process, and the cultural and social context are major factors. According to Vygotsky, nobody can get out of his culture or his context, cultural context, and all cognitive functions originate as a product of social interactions. And learning is not just the assimilation of new knowledge. And learning is a process by which learners are integrated into a learning knowledge community. For example, when we say we learn science, which means we are introduced into science community, or we are inculturated into science community. When we say science community means scientific knowledge, doing science, including inquiry and scientific attitude, all kind of scientific culture or cultures of science, which is what we are introduced or inculturated. And personal constructivists like Piaget have overlooked the social nature of language. This diagram shows Vygotsky's views of learning and development. Development of a child is affected by culture, language, and social interaction. These are main surroundings, or these are critical factors that determine children's development. Vygotsky is most well known for his socio-cultural theory and the zone of proximal development, also known as ZPD, and socio-cultural theory of cognitive development. The first one, what Piaget said, is that learning first occurs in a social context, which is then internalized by the child. Children's cognitive development or mental development occurs by internalizing what he or she experienced, observed their parents and their surroundings. Watching a parent and then mimicking his or her behavior. And the second concept of Vygotsky's learning theory is GPD. Within the GPD, child interact with more knowledgeable other. This MKO could be peers, parent, teachers, or sometimes a computer program, or sometimes books. Whatever or whoever a child can interact with. And then MKO could provide more knowledge or more wisdom so that child can mimic it or them. And within this GPD, this MKO need to provide scaffolding. The aim of scaffolding should be to enable the child to access the challenge. It's like providing stepping stone. We will talk about this scaffolding later. And within this GPD, teachers or MKOs, they provide modeling so that a child can reproduce or mimic that model of modeling behavior or modeling pattern of the MKO. And the third aspect of what Vygotsky's social constructivist learning theory suggested is authentic activities, learning through purposeful tasks in the real world situation. So these are the main aspects of Vygotsky's social constructivism. The big difference between Piaget and Vygotsky is their views on language. According to Vygotsky, language is one of the man's greatest tool of development. It's not just a tool for communication. From Vygotsky, language is tool to manipulate thought, which separates us from animals, ability to use tools. Language is a symbol of thought. It's like a bridge between spoken word and thought, used to carry ideas or manipulate ideas internally. And there are developmental stages of language acquisition or language development. And according to Vygotsky, higher mental functions occur first externally, and then the child internalizes all those mental functions. And then there's a social interaction. According to Vygotsky's socio-cultural perspectives on learning, social interaction develops thinking, and our culture shapes us. And in turn, we also shape our culture. There are many kinds of higher mental functions. Vygotsky explained three forms of language or three stages of language development. One is social speech. It's like language is used for external communication. It's from the birth up to age 3. We could see social speech. And then child moves into egocentric speech. It's like so-called self-talk. It's thinking aloud, where children talk to themselves. Self-talk or self-speech. So thought and language, which developed independently at first and becomes increasingly interdependent as we grow older and internalize our thinking. this egocentric speech ultimately becomes inner speech. It's like internalizing your speech. Talk to yourself or talk to others, and then you internalize your external speech. And then you internalize your external speech into inner speech as a conscious ways of thinking. So, in conclusion, according to Vygotsky, our thinking is mediated by language. And it's also presented as going underground. I mean, starting from the social discourse, and then there's the self-talk on the way to the inner speech. Inner speech is unvocalized thought. So this one also shows the importance of inner speech. Inner speech is like a bridge between spoken words and pure thought. It's like a bridge or in between among external speech, spoken words, and silent speech, which is pure thought. Inner speech is a phase of development as external speech becomes silent speech, so-called pure thought, and it disappears developmentally into intelligence. So, other than animals, such as monkeys, human beings have inner speech, which is a dynamic, unstable, fluid phenomenon, appears in the process of development momentarily, and then it disappears. But it dies away developmentally into intelligence. So, verbal thinking between word and thought, inner speech gives its way to thought itself. So, we can trace developmental stages of language or thought from external speech to inner speech. Or we could say that it's like a transition from spoken words to pure thought. In summary, according to Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory of cognitive development, it says that development and culture are closely related to one another. Therefore, with different cultural context, there could be different developmental stages or patterns found in children. It's not a universal cognitive developmental stages like Piagetian or personal constructivism. And according to Vygotsky, he said that cognitive process, including language, thought, reasoning, develop through social interaction. Children learn through dialogue with wiser members of their culture or society, or also known as more knowledgeable other. In other words, community plays a central role in the process of making meaning or development of cognition by means of language. That's the focus of Vygotsky's learning theory. Before we move on to the summary of Vygotsky, we need to review zone of proximal development. Proximal means what comes next. It's like where the child actually is now, or what they already know, and where you want to take them, what is not known, or it's the in-between area between actual developmental level of the children and the potential developmental level where the teacher wanna take them. So this is called GPD. The role of teacher is to teach to the GPD. Teacher needed to make some kind of a stepping stone or providing scaffolding so that with the teacher's help, student can reach potential developmental level. This is the concept of a GPD. So again, Vygotsky describes the zone of proximal development as the distance, the gap between the actual development level as determined by independent problem solving by the student on their own, and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under the adult guidance or in collaboration with more knowledgeable others through scaffolding. So this diagram shows another aspect of GPD. GPD features, it's like whenever or whatever you start or begin to learn something, you start as a beginner. Or in other expression, you start as an apprentice. And then you observe and mimicking or sometimes internalizing what the MKO does or says. And then after 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, through all those experience and learning by doing and learning by listening and learning by observing, by internalizing what your MKO is doing and acting. In some time, you become a master. It's called cognitive apprenticeship. What Vygotsky named. It's called cognitive apprenticeship. The features of cognitive apprenticeship is that you are not just learning theory or some knowledge. You get to do it. You are learning by doing. So after all the processes of cognitive apprenticeship, you can actually do something, know something. It's kind of a practice, learning by doing. And after all those years, you can practice something based on theory. Do you remember the reflective teaching and praxis? What Freire said? So this one is another important aspect of Vygotsky's learning theory. Okay, then Vygotsky's theories of learning or social constructivist theory had a great impact on education, including curriculum and instruction and assessment. And Jerome Bruno, who emphasized the discovery learning, said that Vygotsky's theory of development is at the same time the theory of education. And based on Vygotsky, there's some emphasis on assessment that should focus on both the level of actual development as well as the level of potential development. And in addition to that, since Vygotsky, the teaching and learning in science and mathematics classroom emphasizes cooperative and interactive experience for our students. And in summary, in the socio-cultural theory represented by Vygotsky, which emphasizes children construct their own knowledge and development cannot be separated from its social context. Learning can lead development, and language plays a central role in mental development, and so on. But there's still some criticism or limitations of Vygotsky's learning theory. He did not or seldomly take into account interactions between individuals and their physical environment. Final thought, the famous word of Vygotsky. He said, "It is through others that we become ourselves," which emphasized cultural or social context or someone or something that surrounds you, which is stepping stone or trigger of our mental development. And there's some comparison between Piaget and Vygotsky, or sometimes personal constructivism and social constructivism. Defining characteristics are different. Piaget suggested some kind of universal cognitive developmental stages, but whereas Vygotsky suggested social interactions, the importance of social interactions, and ZPD and cognitive apprenticeship. And students' readiness and sources of cognitive development, they have different views. And so role of the teacher and the classroom. Piaget advocated discovery learning with little teacher intervention, since student or child go through that stages of cognitive development on their own, okay, with aging, and provide environment that encourages students to interact and ask probing questions. Hypothetically, everyone can reach the end point, so-called formal thought stage. Whereas Vygotsky promoted guided discovery, and he emphasized the help of a more knowledgeable other through scaffolding. And he emphasized engaging learners in socially organized activities and providing scaffolding for the learner so that the learner can reach their potential developmental level with the help of MKOs. And child roles are different as well. Piaget said the child role is independent. But according to Vygotsky, the child role is dependent on social interaction. Students interact with instructor, peers, and socio-cultural environment to solve problems, starting from the beginner up to the master level. And the big the biggest difference is about role of language. According to Piaget, thought drives language development. Formal level, there are 4 stages of Piagetian cognitive development, and at the final stage, children can use symbolic interactions. That is, according to Piaget, thought drives language development. But according to Vygotsky, language drives thought. Do you remember the undergoing external speech into inner speech? That is so-called thought. According to Vygotsky, language is everything. By internalizing external speech or spoken words, which is the inheritance of some culture, by internalizing those words or language, students finally can develop their thought. The inner speech is the bridge between spoken words and pure thought. Anybody, everybody goes through this development of speech or development of thought. So without language, without words, you cannot go through thought development. That's what Vygotsky said. So using the activity sheet, please try to tell the difference between Piaget's or Vygotsky's views of learning in terms of defining characteristics, students' learning readiness, sources of cognitive development, stage theory, roles of a teacher as well as a child or student, and role of language. Thank you very much. Bye.